guys, welcome to day 2 of our pedal event. I'm John and this is Dara here, as you may know. Yesterday we looked at overdrive pedals, distortions and fuzzes. So today's we are going to look at delay and reverb. So Dara, can you tell us what delay is for those who may not know what digital or delay, analog delay or...
Yep, delay, a lot of people sometimes refer to it as echo, and it is just that. And when you play at a note, it'll play the note back to you, maybe even play it a couple of times, giving that sort of effect of like an echo. Sometimes you'll have different effects on that, like repeat, as it were. There are sort of different variations, but that's the most simplest form. That's what it is. It's essentially like an echo of the note you just played.
Yeah. So you can make it sound like, you know, like you're in the Grand Canyon. You can use it to, you know, do very short echoes or whatever. So the slapback echo, everything like that, that we'll run through. And there are also variations within the delay that give you different tones as well that we might not necessarily have, you know, thought about when you look at delay. They're not all the same, are they?
Exactly, and we'll talk a little bit about, you know, analog delays and digital delays and things like that there, and some variations of each as well.
Yeah.
Then the other effect we're going to talk about today is reverb, and reverb is kind of a subtle effect. Well, it can be subtle. Reverb essentially gives you the effect of sort of playing in a different size of a room. So if you imagine just the way natural room kind of reverberation works, using a reverb can make it seem as if you're playing in a big hall, a cathedral, down a well, you know, wherever. Reverb again is one of those things, like it's reverb's a lot of times like a studio effect. It's something you'll add into vocals and the guitars, things like that there. So but a little bit of reverb on a standard guitar sound can give a lot of polish, you know, a lot of that kind of studio vibe to it. So
absolutely. A lot of the time when it's recorded on recorded music, you often, it's only until you isolate tracks you realise how reverb's used, because it's there and you almost wouldn't realise it.
Exactly. And both these effects can be used very subtly, almost to the point that you wouldn't really know they're there, but they're really adding a lot of depth to the sound. Or you can do some really extreme stuff with them to get these crazy ambient, shoegazy, spacey kind of sounds.
Yeah, it's become more of a forefront. I mean, I remember years back we probably wouldn't have sold many reverb pedals. It wouldn't have been a popular thing, but nowadays it's just sort of really, certainly the last sort of 10 years or so, it really has taken off quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's a special effect on its own, which we'll come on to. But I think first thing we can do is look through our delays. Just you may have noticed on our pedalboard camera that the tube screamer on the right is just if you want to add a little bit of drive to the sound as well, so you can hear how that reacts. But looking at the board here, we've got the MXR carbon copy analog delay. So this is where we're talking about different types of delay. We've got digital delay, analog delay, and there are other variations like proper old tape delay as well, where it records it on a tape. We haven't got those because they're super expensive.
Yeah, not as common, very expensive. Again, that would be very much like a studio kind of effect, a rack-mounted thing. So
tell us about this the MXR carbon copy. You used one of these, Dara.
So this is actually my personal pedal, because we didn't have one of these in stock at the minute. So
we've got a mini one.
We've the mini, but we want to demonstrate one of these. Carbon copies analog delay versus digital delay. Generally speaking, analog delays are warmer, so the repeats are a little bit warmer, a little bit darker, and they have this what we call breakup, where the sound of each repeat gradually sort of deteriorates and gets a little bit broken. It's the best way I can describe it.
That can be really useful, I think, if you're using it just as an ambient effect, say on guitar solos, but you don't want the delay to get in the way of your sound. It can work really well for that.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Like a digital delay will always be a bit more kind of clinical and pristine, which is a really cool sound in itself. It can be used for a lot of rhythmic stuff and that, but the analogs are just a little bit simpler, a little bit warmer. Again, out of all the pedals that you'll see here, the MXR has, you know, the least amount of knobs. It's pretty simple. Again, carbon copy is a one-trick pony, but it's a really good trick.
It is. So let's have a listen to this now. How you might use it just to add a bit of So if you set it up with a bit of ambience then. So we haven't got anything at the moment, have we?
Nope, this is just
It's just clean ambience.
that's just my clean sound.
Hearing those repeats, they're just quite.
Sometimes the best way as well, if I just simply do this, you know, and that static note you can hear that repeat and how each one kind of tapers off a little bit.
And they're much darker, aren't they?
Another thing that the carbon copy has, just to show you, and again, we're not going to go through all these different settings, but this regeneration will give me more repeats. So if I set that up quite high, let's keep going. You can just hear those repeats going and going and going.
So, just for those if you don't know, that also comes in the guise of feedback under other pedals as well.
Yeah, feedback
for
regeneration. That mix control is going to basically mix the volume of my guitar and the volume of the repeats. So again, John talked about not letting your delay get in the way. If you're playing a bit of lead work or something like that there, and all these repeats are keep going are really, really loud, things get very, very muddy, very mad, very quickly.
Yeah. So say you you had a nice light guitar solo sound. How can a delay work with regards to some solo lead work? You know, some basic.
Yeah. Well,
how would you have that set up there so we can?
So let me see again. I would want a fairly, I guess, short delay. You know, not too many repeats either.
So what you can hear there is that it's not getting too much in the way, is it?
Exactly.
And you know, put that in a mix. It does make it sound. It just makes it sit quite nicely.
And it adds a bit of, I don't know, depth or something to the lead sound without needing to change your tone or anything too much. It really warms things up.
Totally. With a bit of overdrive as well.
Yeah, let's just try that. Again, just that tube screamer we're using from yesterday's video.
So, Dara, how would that work if we add a bit of drive then?
Yeah, go ahead.
So what that will do in a mix is that, you know, if we turn that off and do the similar sort of... It's almost like this bed of ambience you've got that helps it sit in the band. It can work really well in the mix.
Widens the sound a bit, and I think without it now it sounds a bit, I don't know, dry or a bit like, what's the word? Just very, you know, in your face.
Which is a good sound in its own right, but it just depends on what you want to do.
Exactly.
So that's one use of the delay. Of course, go on.
I was just going to say one other thing I wanted to show you with the carbon copy is a cool sound is this button here. Is the modulation button. So a lot of analog delays, and you do get this with the digitals as well, but there's this effect of adding modulation to the repeats, so not to the dry guitar signal, and you get this warbly kind of, when we were talking about tape echo, it's almost like that sort of effect, and if I was to play something there,
it's almost as if you've got a chorus pedal attached.
Exactly.
But the reason why I think this is quite useful is because if you you're only adding modulation to the repeats and not the initial dry signal.
Yeah.
And that makes a difference because otherwise it can become too much. So it's actually a real nice subtle modulation effect, isn't it? So in some ways with that carbon copy you're kind of getting two effects with one.
Yeah, and just having that clean dry signal.
Yeah.
Gives you that clarity and that fun and stuff.
The definitely.
I mean, that's pretty much the carbon copy.
Yeah. One thing you can do with analog delays is that that regeneration thing, like in self-oscillation, is one of the unique things.
Yeah, so with analogs, I'm just going to show you this. I'll need to do a bit of knob twisting here. You don't have to do this because this is very loud. Stuff like that.
Yeah, so but that is something that won't necessarily work on all delay pedals, will it?
No, there's a couple of newer digital delays that even have analog, what's the word, replications or analog modes.
Yeah.
And that whole thing of the self-oscillating is almost seen as being like bad, like a design flaw. So they took it out because they're like, what if you don't change the knobs in the middle of the song and starts making crazy sounds? So
like that.
yeah, that's one thing
cool thing
that you do get from analogs.
Yeah.
That pretty much wraps up the carbon copy.
It does, yeah. There's not as much to do on that. So really, the other thing, a similar sort of, I suppose, price point really. We've got the DD8, which is it's not been out too long, is it?
No, so upgraded from the DD7. Couple extra things. So what digital delays generally have, not all, but generally, is like different delay types.
Yeah.
So your effect or your repeats, sometimes have different effects on them or slightly different tones, things like that. There. We're just going to use what the standard.
You've got it on the standard digital delay.
Yeah.
So this should give us some standard, pretty. Again, it does the same thing, but the repeats are brighter.
Yep.
And again, you can use that as it will do the similar sort of things in a carbon copy. And if you're playing, say, some lead lines there, Dara, again. So this can do that sort of digital delay thing. It's not the same as an analog delay that the carbon copy does, but you can, with this one, you can switch over. Do you know what, we had that on there? We had that on there. No, this is the standard. There you go. So we had that on the analog emulation.
But it goes to show then that even the analog emulation in that is never quite the same as the analog.
It's not. So you can hear now that's brighter.
Sorry, I didn't know what it did there.
So it's giving you a much sort of cleaner, brighter delay, but there are many settings in there, like you've got tape settings in there. You can even do a reverse. So if you just play some simple ones again.
That's good.
So lots on this one. It's also got the possibility to put a tap tempo switch in there, and also an expression switch. So what that means is that we can control the amount of delay you want via an expression pedal, like something like this.
And the tap tempo, John, would just be if you want those repeats to match up exactly if you play a specific song or a specific tempo.
That's right.
Backing track, for example.
So I think with that in mind, it probably brings us on to show you what tap tempo does. Is the DD500. So that's the next two up from this one. This does give you can see this tap tempo control. If I take
I'm going to pop the lead up with John because he knows a little bit more about this pedal than I do.
So we have one setting where you just use it to. You can use delay just as this sort of background ambient pad, but with tap tempo, you can set what we say as subdivisions as well. So I've got this set up as a dotted eighth note, but you can see this flashing light here. If I hit that, that's giving me the tempo. I click this in, and it's got. So what we can do is use the delay rhythmically. Okay, so making that a bit faster. You can just, you know, if you're going along with a click track or a recording or something like that, it's really useful for that. And that's where the DD500 could be quite useful, or the DD8 to be fair. But what you can do with some of the bigger units, like a DD500 and some others, you can stack one delay into the other. So you can have a dotted eighth note and a quarter note. So without it.
What John's doing there, as he's saying, he's essentially got two different delays at different timings, which gives it that nice kind of galloping effect. So
Yeah.
really, U2, the Edge is really famous for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you can imagine, he has both those delays hooked up to the same tap tempo because it's in the same unit. That effect could be achieved with two delays, but if you imagine trying to get them both synced up to work perfectly, you know, and to be the correct rhythm would take a little bit of effort. Having it together in one unit like that makes things a lot easier.
I don't know if you can see that, it's as close to the edge. They've got a preset in there. That's so the thing with that. All right, is that the difference between this sort of pedal, delay pedal, things like the Boss DD500, the Timeline, which is always a popular one here.
Yep.
You can store your delays in there. So, you know, whenever you are, you know, say you're at a gig and you have one setting that you really like, so say you wanted that sort of edge setting, but the other one you wanted just a subtle analog delay.
Yeah.
You can have one of those. But the other thing is that they're not necessarily, and I can just click back to another voice originally. You can have, yeah, you can just have them to record at your beck and call. The other thing you can do here is obviously we've got, it's like having two delay pedals built in one.
Yeah. Because
we can use the A/B thing and switch one out, switch that one, or I can.
Yeah, which as John's saying, if you're playing a specific gig and you want different delays for different things, you might want like your delay that you're going to set up for your really big, awesome, you know, lead part is not going to be the same delay that you'd use for a clean section necessarily. You might want something a bit more subtle or a bit more, a bit bigger and more ambient for certain parts. So to be able to have different presets saved in there, really, really handy.
It is, and if you, there's a lot of editing you can do in that, but the handy thing with this is that really you've got time, feedback, level, how bright you want it to be, and the modulation depth. So actually, there's 5 knobs on there.
Yeah, so not that much different, not that more complicated than the
No, so you can, if I wanted to change the feedback straight away, there you go. I can turn around and adjust. If I want loads of repeats, I can take that back. Or if I want to add a lot of
modulated sound again.
So it really is quite straightforward. So these things can look daunting, but I think you know, they have put that front panel on there to make it really quite simple as well. So you don't have to be a real tech head to get on with that. So you know, always really worth checking out. And like the DD8, there's so many different types of delay in there. So you know, what we've heard here is a vintage digital delay stacked into an analog, which is quite popular. So yeah, you could spend hours talking about a DD5, to be honest, and timelines and whatnot. But just in case you're curious and you know what these bigger delay units do, then that's kind of a sort of brief introduction.
Just to wrap this up very quickly, again, we're sort of working with what we have and showing you different pedals that we sell here. But that DD500, that's John's personal pedal. He owns that. The carbon copy is mine. Just to show that there's an argument for both. Obviously, this does amazing things. There's presets. There's all kinds of tweaking you can do with it. That's great.
Yeah.
I also see a lot of benefit in the pedal that just sort of sounds good wherever it is. There's not too much thinking about it. You just turn it on.
It's a bit like what we were talking about the tube screen yesterday.
Exactly. So there's arguments for both.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. But I
Yes.
think move on from delays.
Yes.
We'll look at some reverbs.
Yeah.
We have here on the board.
So reverbs, we can make reverbs. Just say if your guitar amp doesn't have reverb, some guitar amps don't have it. We can set up a reverb just to give you some sounds. If you want to make it like the sound of a room.
Yeah.
So Dara, what I might do is give you.
Yes.
Turn that echo off. And I'm just going to give you. Let's see. So if we have a room reverb. So you can hear now. It's a subtle. We're making it sound like we're in a slightly bigger room. If I take that off now. Okay, I'm adjusting that by an expression pedal, by the way, if you're wondering where my hands have got to. And then if I increase that in a bit more. Great.
Very nice.
But so you can use it to give you quite a natural enhancement to the room sound. If you're in a very dry room, that can be really useful. The thing is, reverbs have really moved on a lot more from there, haven't they?
Yeah, so it's no longer this sort of subtle studio effect. And I think, again, maybe that's the reason it wasn't so popular, because reverb was something that's not terribly obvious. Maybe if you're sitting playing with people and that, but there's quite a few more extreme sounds in there.
Yeah, so I think modulation reverb is one of them.
From the delays.
That's right.
Your dry signal's not modulated, it's the reverb itself that has that.
Yeah, so actually, and talking of that, stacking it with you know, some kind of, I think even stacking it with some kind of delay. It'll work. RV6 is quite, I think it's quite an affordable pedal, but it does an awful lot. So you've got modulation in there, and your standard room sounds and plates and halls and things like that. But it is, I think you get a lot, there's a lot for your money really with that sort of setup. And if you add the expression pedal, you can really control how strong you want that reverb to be. What I'm going to do is if we move to the Blue Sky, because Strymon make pedals that are on loads of Pro boards, aren't they?
Yeah, so that'll be your kind of top end.
Sort of the Big Sky, Blue Skies, and the Timelines, always very popular. The Blue Sky is the slightly smaller one. So what I like about this is that they've taken a couple of real popular verbs from the Big Sky and then put it onto the Blue Sky, but gave you just some simple adjustments that you can use as well. So Strymon are really are the king of sort of modulated reverbs and stuff like that. They really do make
shimmer
some
effects and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn the Blue Sky on, and we'll have it on got it on a plate reverb, and then if we bring in the modulation. That's a different sounding modulated reverb to the RV6. It's similar, but there's a different. This is a great pedal. That's really nice. Really nice. For that real big sound, let's stack in a big delay. And the big key here that's quite nice with the Blue Sky is that it's got a pre-delay in there. And what that does, if I take that delay off, Harry, if you just hit the note, you can hear, if I turn that right up, there's the reverb doesn't come in straight away. And the reason why we use that is because you can get the dry signal first and it doesn't interfere as much. The trouble is if you have reverb and you took that pre-delay right off, it can easily get extremely messy.
Yeah, things start to get a bit unclear when you have a lot of that going on.
So the Blue Sky works really nicely for that. But if you, but going away from it, it's not a one-trick pony. You can, we can go to a room reverb, take the modulation off. You've got more of a standard. Yeah, if you were playing like a lead lines over the top of that. So, in my opinion, I think that is it's really simple to use the Blue Sky, should I say, and the RV6 to be fair, and a bit of reverb and adjusting of the EQ as well you've got on there, but there's not lots and lots of buttons to worry about. And the only other thing you've got with that is the shimmer effect as well. So you can add. It's like what it does is it adds a high octave, and the Strymon shimmer setup works really nicely. So I'm going to leave that delay on. I'll put it back on the plate actually.
Or a synth
it is, yeah. So when you're spreading chords, it comes out really nicely. Now, they all do that. You can actually get a. And that's the RV6 one. You can get it. you get some nice padded effects from that as well. So I think we've kind of, you can see our reverb kind of goes away from, you know, just making you add a bit of ambience to something that is more of a specialist thing.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some real extreme versions of reverbs which can get away from you pretty quickly. I mean, it can go from being a subtle effect to warm things up to being this huge, big, cavernous, you know.
Yeah.
Again, we talk about, I don't know, genres of music like shoegaze and ambient kind of stuff and droney music where you get these big soundscapes, so to speak.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff will be very popular in the likes of, you know, worship music and things as well.
Yes.
I'll add in those big swells with your volume pedal and things like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that gives you, we're licking the edge of it really, but that hopefully you can now have a bit more of an understanding as to what delay does and a couple of the different types available. You know, as ever, I think if there's any questions about it, we will have a Q&A.
Yeah,
we'll be able to,
you can literally ask us anything, whether it be about specific pedals or any of these effects, and just, again, who would use it? You know, if there's particular artists, particular sounds and things you have in mind, don't be afraid to ask us. We can't guarantee to know, but we'll certainly give it a listen. I think that's kind of the time-based stuff pretty mopped up for today. I think tomorrow we're going to be looking at some modulation effects. We're going to talk to you about what they are and what they do. So yeah, thanks again just for joining us, and hopefully this was informative.
Cheers.
Right.